when I was in a counterinsurgency in Iraq, you realize that when you have an asymmetric battlefield, you do have to use all of the weapon systems and come out and realize that sometimes in the winning of a battle of hearts and minds, it's not just based on what you would say a linear progression of the battle. And you cannot track it that way. You have to see that how has this progressed the ball forward. Getting rid of DOMA, I wish President Obama would have done that 2 years ago. And I think that if he would have, then we would have had a much better chance with Jerry Nadler and Feinstein and Gillibrand doing what they're doing right now. Too bad they didn't. We're not going to go back in the past and spilt milk. But I think what you're talking about right now, I think all of that definitely helps in not just getting rid of certain laws and overturning certain decisions, but bringing that sense of somebodyness to all people and say, even those people who are 40, 50, 60, 80 years old saying, you know what? For my entire life, I never thought marriage was for me. I thought it was patriarchal and I thought it was a system of dominance. But maybe now, because it's available, and it's not just these kids that it's bad, but I want it too.
I don't think you do you breathe?
Can I? Let me just jump off.
Take a breath.
Let me
Go
just
ahead,
jump
Carrie.
off real quick and say. Let me just jump off real quick and say that I think marriage is one thing that symbolizes that the queer community can be recognized in all of their humanity, their ability to love each other, and that is as important as any heterosexual union. That is, their love is as significant and as holy and as beautiful as anybody else's love. So I think that's one part of us as a community being recognized in our full humanity. Just like repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell and saying that if you're willing to take a bullet for your country, then you should be able to do so in view of your countrymen, was one part of being recognized for our full humanity. So I think it's very important. As for me getting married, I don't know. But having said that, as for roping someone into marrying me, I don't know. Anyway, so having said that, I think the DOMA decision is very important for a couple reasons. One, it was a fully executive action. I mean, this was something that I don't think ever would have happened 6 months ago. The success of Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal and how much love and praise that the administration got from that, from the progressive community, without taking very much heat for it, has given them, I think, a little bit of a boost in terms of our issues. So as a purely executive action, this is the president taking the bull by the horns, and maybe too late, by some people's standards, but doing it nonetheless. The other thing that he has said is, and I'm not going to try and get into too much of the legal weeds here, because I'm not a lawyer, but I did do a fair amount of reporting on this. He has said that in his view, gays and lesbians should be treated by the constitutional and seen by the courts as a protected class, and that shifts the burden of proof to the government to have to prove that they have a good reason to discriminate against us. This is part of the paradigm shift I'm talking about. That translates into the greater community. The burden of proof being shifted to people who are going to discriminate against us, them having to prove a good reason for why they would do it. And so I think that having the President of the United States say that and do so by virtue of executive action is extremely important, and yes, I think can affect Proposition 8.
And you directed it to all of us, so I'll answer. I'm going to quote Kate Kendall, the executive director of NCLR, which is, I don't know any parent that said they want to stand up at their child's commitment ceremony. That's actually what changed my mind. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It's absolutely true. We actually have a question from Twitter. I'm so excited about that. So with HRC and the task force so ineffective, how can we concentrate our advocacy and action to affect legislation?
Wow.
How? I think that the answer lies within all of us and not from any of the particular modes or vehicles that we might copy from others. We have to have it organically done, and I do not think that the Human Rights Campaign or even the National Gay Lesbian Task Force, although they try harder than HRC, are fully representative of the organic underpinnings of our movement. And that's what is most tragic. When we talk about the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, and we talk about the people who are not able to access the media, sometimes you don't depend on the the organizations like GLAAD and others to say, well, these are the spokespeople that we're going to trot out. We're going to put this person who looks like a drag queen or this person who's acceptable or this person. You should stand up and you start your own protests. I know that many people have actually protested against the human rights campaign, stood up and heckled at the State of the Movement address with the Gay Lesbian Task Force. I know that many people have stood up in the past, and I think as long as you continue to do that, that's what will not only inspire more movement in our particular effort, but it will inspire others in their movements as well.
I would reduce that down to think globally, act locally, especially right now, because right now we've got this 2-year period where, and maybe more, but where the House is controlled by Republicans. Now, not all Republicans are bad on our issues, but right now enough of them are that doesn't help us pushing any legislation through, right? So this piece about educating people, getting involved, knowing what rights we do and don't have, educating yourself, and then going out and educating people locally on the ground, at the local level, getting involved with smaller organizations. Maybe they're doing direct actions. Maybe they're holding bake sales to raise money. I mean, God only knows what they're doing, but it doesn't matter as long as you're passionate about it and you're getting active locally. I think this education piece, both in terms of educating ourselves and then educating the greater public by talking to people who are seated right next to you on the train or on the bus or at work, is incredibly important. And that education piece will be incredibly helpful if we can get to a place legislatively where we have more pro-equality legislators. That education piece will then push things much easier.
One of the more finer points, I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't point this out. I think that our national organizations are by and large tied to the DNC, to the Democratic National Committee, and I think that they take marching orders from them. I think that is the selling out of our movement, and I want to point out that when we do have equality in our lifetimes, the Democrats and the Republicans are still going to be fighting around to see who's going to have dominance. I think they should kiss our ass. I think that nobody should ever apologize or say thank you to any politician. They need to jump on board with us.
I think that when I'm talking about this paradigm shift, people are actually starting to say, what are we doing that's causing kids to jump off of bridges? There are people who are actually starting to grapple with what it means to tell your son or daughter that you think what they're doing is a sin, and whether or not that might drive them to do something that you would never want to see happen. So I think there is those cases continue, and they're horrible. And the one thing I would say is there's something that we couldn't have counted on and that no one would have wanted to happen, but hopefully they're raising the profile of how much damage society is doing to their kids by saying, you can't participate in a society equally. You can't serve in our military. You can't tell someone you love them and have it recognized by the government. You can't. And I do think that this is starting to shift, and not just for us as part of the queer community. I think for the community at large is starting to look at this and say, what are we doing to our kids?
I think that is on that note. So how we think? First session. Let's thank our first speakers, Karen Elvin and Dan Troy. Thank you.
Thank you.